were spoken about a lot with Diamond, floating comic book stores who were struggling and stuff like that. And then you were talking a little bit about your childhood. So I think this is a good pivot point right now to go into the Mike story, right?
Sure.
When did you decide you wanted to open a comic book store? How did you open it? Like, take us through the journey of Mike as a younger man opening his first store and to where you are now. I think a lot of people would love to hear that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I kind of tell everyone that one, I didn't know what I wanted to be growing up, right?
Okay.
Like I think a lot of people do, but I think it's less popular to acknowledge that a lot of people don't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's also okay if you have like 5 different ideas of what you want to be like into your 30s and you're just like doing stuff.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
There's no right way to do just about anything, right?
As long as you're doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you want to like figure out a way to like jump into both legs of your pants at once in the morning, like okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't think that's a great way of doing it, but I'm not going to be like you can't do it that way.
Yeah.
Maybe not every day, but
yeah, spice things up
percentage-wise
sometimes.
of the accuracy is going to go down.
Maybe it gets better. Who knows?
Maybe,
It's like shooting a free throw. You're just going to get better at it, or you're going to quit.
Exactly.
It sounds like a weekend deal only for me. I'm just saying.
Yeah. There you go. Treat yourself. So,
Yeah, right?
I in a very roundabout way came to this, but when I was a kid, the sort of one consistent thing was that I just loved reading.
Mm.
Loved it. I was like the little nerdy kid who would carry around like just giant books and just like sit and read and wait for my parents to like take me to the next stop or whatever, right?
Okay.
And I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I was pretty young when my mom like bought me my first comic off just like a spinner rack when they existed, really.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was sort of like a way to be like, hey, this will keep you busy, or hey, this is like a bribe because you're being just be good on all these errands.
Yep.
And when I was old enough, it became like, well, she would just like drop me off at local comic shops and drop me off at like geeky game stores and things like that. And like the store owners would kind of get to know me. I get to know them. I get to know the older guys, and we would just like talk comics or like look at trading cards and things like that. And it was always in the back of my head that if I just like stumbled across like a bunch of money, or if I just like was retiring or something, maybe I would like work in or open up a small comic shop or something like that. And, that I'm obviously not retired and I didn't come into a bunch of money, but what happened was, I kind of did the responsible thing for a while where it's like, I went to college and I graduated and I was like, what do? I don't know. So I went to grad school and I got, a master's, and I was like, what do? And it's like, I don't really know, but like, I guess I want to teach. I like teaching. I think that's cool. I like talking to people.
Yeah.
So then I went and started working my PhD, and I finished all the coursework, and I was going to, go dissertation time. And then I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like,
Wow.
I don't think I can be in higher education. I think I like teaching. I think I like all sorts of things that, and I in the process of all of that, I got a job as a professor teaching for a couple years, and it was clear it wasn't working out. And I was like, okay. I talked to my girlfriend now at the time and now wife.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey, this is really crazy. But, at the time, because of the job, I moved out to the Midwest, and we had both moved from the East Coast, and her family was West Coast. It still is.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, this is nuts. But like, I don't think we can stay here and just find jobs. I think we should just like, if one of us finds a job on a coast, just like go. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
And none of this is comics related. It's just kind of like the human side of things where you're like, hey, sometimes, you just need your people, right?
There's a human in the shop, man. That you're fine.
Yeah. There's always like when we're open, there's at least one human. And
at least always me. Yes. Rule number 1, at least one human.
Yeah. So it was like she actually found a job right around when I was pitching this idea of like, hey, what do you think? Like I know this place's shop is looking to close down, and like this is kind of close to my family. I have some money set aside, and it would be scary and it'd be a little bare bones for a while, not just for us, but in the shop. Mm-hmm. It's just not going to be, like a nice shop for a while. We're just going to like try to build it up. And she was just like, oh, if you think you could be happy every day doing that, because you kind of knew the stress and how difficult it was for me to do the other job, I was like, yeah, I think so. And I told her it was always my pipe dream or the retirement plan, and that at the very least I would know, like I would just know whether I loved it or whether I liked it, or if I could keep doing it, then I would know very quickly.
Yeah.
Right. And then also whether it succeeded or failed, that I would know I tried.
True.
And so
And
both of those things are pretty important. What's that?
And you would know you went for it, and it wasn't
Yeah.
something you had to look back and go, man, I should have done this.
Yeah, and you know what? Like it wasn't just like the fear of looking back and be like, oh, I should have done that. It was just like specifically, right? To take it back to like DC, or like they had that opportunity because of COVID to be like, hey, no more contract here, right? I had this opportunity because I was looking at just moving on and potentially moving on to a completely different profession, moving into something that might not even use the degree I had. And so it's just like, well, if that's the case, why can't it be comics?
Yeah.
So, anyways, that all happened, and it took months to obviously get everything in order because we're moving across the country. We got to find a place to live. I have to then decide, if I'm actually doing this in Bayonne, if I'm getting a place somewhere else, if I want to work with this other store owner, all of these things. And just when I think I have like everything sort of set up, and again, this is all on like a shoestring budget. Then Sandy hits like a couple weeks before we're supposed to open.
Yeah.
And I'm finishing kind of like painting things up and moving things in, and
that's the old store. Everyone.
Yeah,
that's the old store.
The old store that also was on the second floor, so that was not fun.
Store. I remember.
Yeah, and then we also, we didn't open with a computer system. We didn't open with all sorts of stuff because Sandy ruined everything.
Yeah.
Right, like everything in the state was shut down, and it was just so hard to get anything done. The first week or so when I opened, I had like an old school cash register. It's just like ding, and I had to add everything up by hand, and then it was like, okay, this computer system's here, and then I had to do all that on the fly, and it's crazy that's we're going on 8 years now, and also a location around the corner that's it's nice. It's the picture of it's behind me.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean that's sort of how I got into it. I don't know if there's other specific aspects you're curious about.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely curious, especially since I kind of got back into comics with the New 52 when I was in college, and so did Rob.
Okay.
And I stopped, before that for a while with, financials and just life as an inner city kid. And I remember like starting up at Vector Comics, which I believe is the store you took over. Yeah,
sort of. Go ahead.
No, just like how was that process of out of all the conversations we've had in the past 8 years, like how was the process of taking over from Vector, who kind of was retiring and leaving that game of just comic books and taking that over? How did that kind of like fall into your lap? Because you're from Ohio, so coming over,
I'm from so my formative years were in Ohio, and then like then my family moved out to Jersey.
Yeah.
And then I stayed. I went to Seton Hall for school, kind of right down the road, and then grad school and work took me, south and the Midwest, and then back here. So, I've spent a fair amount of time in Jersey before this, and then also with Seton Hall, just kind of knowing the general area. But you kind of look around and you're just like, all right, well, if I were to open a comic book shop, like where would it be? Like, what's a good spot? And with Vector, it was funny because just like talking to him, because originally I was like, well, if there's a place that's looking to transition, or whether they're selling the business or they're just closing, it makes a lot of sense to go to some place that has a community, and be like, hey, that community still needs this service and still needs a hub.
You're fulfilling the need.
Yeah. Well, and also, you're kind of just like, well, it's, you don't have to build it from scratch. You're like, I'm building my shop, right? I didn't go into his shop and just like start working there instead of him. But you at least know, you're like, oh, there's people used to go in a shop, used to a pull list, and they don't have to go to a different town. So, and speaking to him, I was like, hey, I'm looking for, thinking about this. What do you think? And I'm thinking about different locations, and, I don't know what you're thinking. I'm not, going to compete with you or anything. I could just like open somewhere else. I could find some other location, right?
Yeah.
And Joe at Vector, who's been doing it forever, he was like, honestly, I don't remember the last time I read a comic book. He's just old. Wow. He's an old dude, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, if you open up down the street tomorrow, I would close.
Huh.
And I was like,
oh wow.
Okay.
Like, good and bad.
Yeah, right? Yeah, because I'm like, that's not, I'm kind of like, hey, like I want to I'd like to learn your experiences,
Mhm.
right? I also, don't think you have to do that. That's not what I'm saying, right? If you're like, but it was clear he was ready.
Mhm.
And so that's sort of how it became like, okay, well, let's figure stuff out. And it's funny, a lot of the older guys, especially from Vectors, are like, oh, you took over Vectors, or did you buy all Vector stuff? And I'm like, no, I think I bought like maybe like 10 boxes from him.
Oh wow.
It was crazy too, because I was I didn't really know this. I was just like, oh, like I'll buy these boxes off of you if like you're just done, right? If you don't intend to do shows, or you're just not going to do anything else with them. And Joe, for whatever reason, wasn't like, well, if you want all these others, this is the price for them. Just take it all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then, as I'm picking the stuff up, all the other stuff was gone. And I was like, what'd you do with that?
Oh,
And he's like, oh, I just like dumped it to a liquidator. And a lot of liquidators will buy boxes, especially like organized boxes, for maybe 15, 20 bucks a box.
Yeah.
wow.
And starting out, I was kind of like, hey, man.
Yeah.
I was like, if
I
you
could have used that.
I could've
if you
taken
wanted
that.
to sell them for like 15 bucks a box, I would have bought them all,
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, that's cool. But he I was like, hey, I want to do right by him too, just out of respect. Like, he's been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Of
I
course.
forget the legal term for it now. It's been so long, but it's basically like buying someone's expertise, right, or goodwill.
Mhm.
And I was like, hey, I'll give you X amount if the 2 months before I open, you just help the transition.
That's cool.
And if the like first couple weeks I'm there, you're just there to kind of make sure like I'm not screwing anything up completely, but
Yeah.
also if it's someone and they're unsure, it's like that's okay. Like, you're a friendly face, right?
Yeah.
And within like 2 or 3 days, he was just kind of like looked at me, and this is not a knock on him at all. Like, when you're that old and you've been doing something for so long, I think that you're just gonna get to this point.
Yeah.
And he's sitting on the stool, and he kind of looks at me after someone leaves, and he's like, "You got this, right, Mike?"
That's
You
great.
ready
was
to
like-
go?
I was like, "Yeah, I think. I mean, it's like, look, if you're saying like, are you contractually obligated to stay here for like
Yeah.
another week? Like, no, I don't care, man. Like, it'd be nice, right? But
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
like, if you want to go. It's like, yeah. So it's like, it's cool.
You're
It's
not
funny,
held
like,
hostage.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh no, it says in our paperwork you have to be here. And I was like, no, the whole point was to like do right by him, get him a little nest
Yeah.
egg. I budgeted a certain amount, and I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? This has saved me so much time and money
Mhm.
that it's just like, I think it was the right thing to do.
So
Yeah.
I have a
And,
question from
yeah.
like a comic book store goer to like the comic book shop. Like, is there like a website you could just like, all right, I want to get all these books, have them delivered. I want to get these boards. I want to get these board games. I want to get these pops. Is it like an Amazon shop? Like, all right, I get all these stuff, have it shipped to my store, then I sell it. Like, I never really understood like how that part worked. Like, how do you get product into your store, kind of deal?
Oh, sure. I mean, so distributors will have websites.
Okay.
Some of those websites are customer facing, right? Like a portion of those websites. So
Mhm.
you can go to Diamond's website, or you can go to UCS's website, and there's a customer facing portion that is basically like, hey, this is the stuff that's coming out. This is what, some information about it. Here's some images, right, on the basic stuff. But also, like, these are the shops in our network, right? Or these are the people. This is where you would go to get your book.
Yeah.
Then, in a lot of cases, whether it's at the very bottom of the site or some small sidebar or something, or maybe you have to type in something else, the URL in some cases, there's the retailer facing side. And
Okay.
that's where you just have your separate account, and you go in, right? It's it would be like we're doing this on Zoom, right? Like,
Mhm.
there's some sort of different thing they know if you have like a pay plan versus if you don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yep.
just get different
Gotcha.
stuff, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, if I'm going in as a retailer because I have an account and I have a login for the retailer side of things, then I go in there and I can see everything and order everything. And that's
Ah,
the other
okay,
issue
cool.
too, right? It's like, it's not a huge additional burden,
Mhm.
but when, let's say, 80% of your product is coming from one place, it's really easy to see that stuff total up. It's really easy to budget. It's really easy
Mhm.
to just have fewer points of failure. When you're
Yeah.
doing it now, DC as one company is making you add 2 more companies to your supply line. That's just more work.
It's more, yeah, like more accounting
Yeah.
budget. Like, all right, I got to go to this place, get all my board games and my Marvel stuff. Oh, now I have to
Yeah.
go here for DC, and now
Yeah.
I have to also go here for other DC.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
And Diamond has a sister company called Alliance,
Oh,
and
okay.
they are the largest sort of like board gaming distributor. So we have an account with them as well, but we also have one with another company. So we have a few different board game distributors,
Okay.
and part of that, and part of the reason that's frustrating, is because some stuff is exclusive with Alliance and some stuff isn't, right? And that's a
Yep.
situation that Diamond's creating, where it's like, it's good that Diamond and Alliance don't have a monopoly on every single thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense to do things this way either, right? And I
Yeah.
think the way they've done it too is, aside from just making more money, right, which is obviously their goal, I don't know that this draws other publishers to these new distributors. Just doesn't make sense. But yeah, that's I don't want to get too much back into the DC stuff, but it's
No, it's fine.
but yeah, that's there's retailer facing websites that you use to order stuff, and in many cases they're a lot more bare bones than what you would find on an Amazon or anything else.
Okay.
So,
What-
Mike,
oh, go
as
ahead.
you've been kind of growing, and you get the stuff from Joe Vector, and you changed the
Mhm.
name, and you went from the second floor shop to now the big glass window shop
Yeah,
It's
around
pretty,
the corner.
guys.
And yeah, no,
Thanks.
it's great shop. You started doing logos. This is the old logo shirt. You have the new one.
yeah.
And it's kind of like this community base. How was it for you? What were kind of like key moments in this timeline, especially prior to COVID, of
Yeah.
you like some of your biggest moments at the shop, or the amount of people coming in? There's a lot of those same faces coming in. I know
Yeah.
my list has gradually gone into insane mode over the years. I think when
Yeah,
I started with you, like day one, I had like 3 or 4 books a month.
yeah.
And now if I, my smallest stack, I think per week when it's normal is probably 10 to 12.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. There's part of that. It's tough to answer your question with like one big moment, right? Because there's a lot of it is very organic.
Yeah.
There are people who have been with me for 8 years. There are people who have just kind of found me. Yeah, just kind of found me because of the new location. When we're going on 4 years there now, and it's right off. It's your walk home from the 34th light rail. So
Mhm.
people just kind of pop in, and I think that was a big change for us. Was obviously the move.
Yeah.
And just being like, hey, we're on this like ground floor. Like you said, you got the big windows, so especially when it's dark, people notice. The lights are on and they see all this shiny stuff in there.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had people who've have liked comics who just kind of came in because of that. Who
Mhm.
never was never even just like, oh, let me Google to see if there's like a store in the area. Would just like comics and never think too much about it. Would sometimes maybe order a graphic novel off of Amazon, maybe get one as a gift or something,
Yeah.
but not really go to a comic book shop. So I think that's cool. There's been a lot more of that, like kind of walk in, aha, or like walk in, this is so cool moment. So the move was huge. That was really big. I think just being able to get just like a better experience to people, and myself included, I think, for stuff like Free Comic Book Day, where you're just like, you just walk in and out, you don't have to like fight your way down the stairs. Like that's kind of annoying.
Oh yeah. That's
So
true.
you're just like, just little things like that was really big for the shop. I think doing more within the community has been great. Like one of the things that have been getting us through COVID is just like donating stuff to the schools. Like we donate a bunch, and then there's an option on the website to donate reader bundles to kids, and those get distributed through the free lunch program in Bayonne.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Just kind of being more integrated with the community, doing more stuff with like parent teacher organizations. I never thought in opening like a shop that I would be doing, like street fairs and festivals, but sometimes in Bayonne we end up doing that. We've done them in Jersey City as well. Not anytime soon, but we have, and that's cool. It's like it's completely different. I think just generally going into it, I read and learned as much as I possibly could, and then you just have to just do stuff, and it's. Any small business owner, whether it's comics or not, is going to tell you kind of just become a jack of all trades, right? Like you don't want to hire, someone to fix something if you can do it yourself. Right?
Are you still able to also still be like a fan of it too? Like I know me and you have talked about, a billion books and storylines and
right.
good and bad and everything in between, as just natural comic fans do. But are you still able to, kind of know what's in the sauce and still have the time to be like,
like how the
fan.
sausage is made, right?
Exactly.
As they say, yeah. Yes and no. I'll say like I end up reading a lot more random number ones, which is really cool because I do want to know what I'm selling, and I want to kind of be like, okay, like wasn't so sure about this book and they didn't send me an advanced PDF, but now that it's here and I'm reading it, I'm like, I think like Chris would really dig it, you know, and I can like set it aside for you. And if you don't want it, cool. But you know what? Like I can't do that if I didn't read it.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of time, just being like, oh gosh, there's these like 5 books I normally wouldn't read that I'm going to read. And by definition, they can't all be good. So it is a little draining doing that. But it's also, I always view it as like, how cool is it that is one of the things I do to better prepare for my job? Like that's really cool.
You read comics for your job. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a big part of the job. Now, you know, people who've been with me for years, you know, sometimes they may see me like for the first time reading a comic in the shop, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen you reading in the shop." Because I've
never seen you read in the shop.
Yeah, it's very rare. There's always something to do. So when I'm at the shop working, it's unless I'm literally reading something to figure out how to sell it, I don't read in the shop. I don't read for fun in the shop ever. Yeah. That's just not a thing, because that's how you get bad at your job. And I don't think, I don't want to say everyone's doing that or everyone's got one way to do comic book shop, but that's kind of my own thing, is like, I'm not going to just like post up and read comics. So if I'm reading, I'm doing research. And then when you come in, you know, it's like, I'll say hello, I'll ask you if you need help. And if you say no, then I guess I'll read this book I was reading. But if you want help, you want to talk about something, then cool, let's do that.
Yeah.
But
and it gives you knowledge bases too. So maybe someone comes in and asks you a question like about, oh, I heard about this number one. It's, you know, an obscure character that you probably don't read every month, but you have a couple points where you can be like, oh yeah, this was pretty good, or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
How did you decide on Manifest as the name?
Let me finish Chris's question really quick, and then we'll go to Manifest. So, so I end up reading roughly the same amount of like new weekly stuff as I did before, which is, I think, would shock most people. You'd think I'd read a bunch more, but that's because I end up reading these number ones. But I found that like one of the best things that a mentor said in grad school was, sometimes when you're exhausted or you're tired, you don't have to like just take a break. You can just do something different.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I reconnect with comics just by reading older stuff, whether that's something I've read or it's a reread, or if it's new to me, right? Like I've told a lot of people on our Facebook lives that I've never read the entirety of Peter David's X Factor run, and especially not in order. It's kind of like more when it's crossed over with other X stuff. And so that's one of the things I've been doing during pandemic times, is just like, pretty much every night I've read 2 or 3 issues of that run. It's like, it's great. It's a great run.
That's a sick run. That's a really sick run.
Yeah. And it's just like one of those things I hadn't done. You know, some people are like, I've never read the whole, I don't know, like Wonder Woman from New 52, or I've never got into Saga. You know, you're just like, well, it's a great time to get into Saga now, because they're on a big break. And they're at the midpoint, catch up. And then when they come back, you're starting off with everyone else, and it's going to be awesome.
Flow.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, like I am still a fan, but sometimes as you say, like, you know, if you know how the sauce works, it is tough, or if you're in that grind, it's tough. Yep. But I think like getting that little change instead of getting away from it really kind of keeps me sane.
I'm the same way. I go back to the older stuff, or like the nostalgic era of childhood reading comics or something like that, or really old books that I'm just like, oh, I wonder where did this person start? If it's an obscure character, I'll go look it up or something.
I mean, it used to be, I don't think I've done it this last like 18 months probably, but once a year I used to read Hush, just because that was one of the first books that I was just like, yep, everything I wanted. You know?
I think that's when our friendship blossomed. I think it was over. It was like, yes, normal comic goer that comes in, and then it was like, oh wait, you think Hush is also the best Batman story of all time? And it was
yeah. You're just like, you know, if it wasn't like the old guys, or it wasn't just like the influence of the Frank Miller stuff, I think Hush would be regarded as like the best like self-contained story.
Yeah.
Especially for anyone who grew up on the animated series, it's just like that's what it is, right? It's the animated series but grown up. So
it's amazing.
Okay, so for Manifest, it's funny because it's like there's a couple meanings to it, and a surprisingly low amount of people ask. They're just kind of like, oh, it's the name of the shop, whatever. But for a weird duration of time, my mother and sister, if they wanted like a red light to not be red, or they wanted a parking spot or something, they would just say like, you have to manifest it, right? Like you have to will it into being. You have to like want this to be a thing and believe it will be a thing, and then it will become reality, right? So obviously when you're chasing the pipe dream, that's part of it. And then manifests, it's, I think a lot of people also know the other meaning of it, which is it's just a list. It's a list of things.
Yep.
And whether it's, your pull list of what you're getting every month, or it's just an invoice or the list or the inventory, whatever it is that I have, the name just kind of felt right. And then it's the third thing that was pointed out is just like Manifest Comics is like MC, it's my initials, so it's kind of just like all flowed together, and you're just like, yeah, I kind of like the ring of it, and it has a good meaning, so let's do that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And obviously, I know you got 2 kids, want to get you out of here soon, but
it's all good.
We gotta ask you and talk to you a little bit about COVID hitting.
Yeah.
You went through Sandy. Right before you were open, and I believe you still opened on time, if I remember, with Sandy.
Oh yeah, so it was funny because I
3 weeks.
I called Joe up, and I was like, hey, so obviously this is not what we talked about, and it doesn't really matter either way to me. Like if I'm just seeing if you care, like if I push this back a couple weeks or not. And he's like, no, I'm gonna close, and you should just open.
And it was like, so it's funny because like if you know Joe, it's exactly Joe.
yeah. He's so like laid back and just kind of like, but he's also, it's like you're not going to convince him otherwise, right? So you're just like, okay. So we still open on time. It was awesome. So one of the best things about opening that date and not moving it that I'm really glad about looking back on is that was the first new comic book day we had was all new X-Men #1.
Oh wow!
Yes, it was. Oh my god!
And like I grew up on X-Men, love the cartoon, love like the core characters. Obviously, we grew up on a lot of Bendis stuff as well. So when that's in like your first big comic shipment that you're unpacking, that's awesome. And it's just kind of like, all right, I don't know if this is gonna work, but right now, I really really want to try. So yeah, I mean it's. Look, like, this isn't ideal for anyone. I think it would be easier if we had, at the outset, a sense nationally of what was going on.
Totally.
Just in terms of, like, hey, these are the guidelines. This is how we think we slow this thing. And to be able to come out, the next week and be like, hey, these are the things we were wrong about. This is what we learned. And this is now what should happen, right?
Yeah.
And that... leaving it all up to the states and towns so early, I think made things a little bit worse. And that was the toughest part, right? And I think that's the toughest part with the decision Diamond had to make, where it was like some stores were still open, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of stores right now are open.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be able to be open to the public, assuming the numbers don't spike after the Memorial Day, like 2-week grace period, that we'll be able to open the week of June 15th, right?
Yep.
Now, if they spike out of control, who knows? Because you look at Florida, and they've posted, I think, their third straight day of 1,000 new cases, which each day has been a peak, I think. So it's just, maybe they have to shut down again. Who knows?
Maybe.
But yeah, I would love to have this story about how I have this, like, how I always had this plan, and that this is how we're going to get through this. But I don't know. And I think a lot of shop owners are very concerned. Several shops have already closed up. We've been able to survive a bit because of, our ties to the community. Like no one has ever been like, hey, can I get a picture of these schools handing out your comics that I'm buying to donate? Or can I see this? Or like what school are they? No one has ever asked me any details. It's always just been like, here's money. We know you. We know you get this to the community. We know you donate all the time. And so there you go. And this all started from a customer being like, hey, I want to create, a recurring, payment every month. And that will go to help people who, are out of work and can't afford books, but want reading, and to get kids reading, to kind of help them get through this really difficult time.
That's awesome.
And from that, I was like, okay, well, if this person has this idea and they want to remain anonymous, and they're willing to put, a significant amount of money where their mouth is, one that obviously helps the shop stay afloat, because I can then pay bills with that money, right?
Sure.
But it also lets me keep, well, not even just keep, but do a lot more good in the community in a time when it's needed. And so that led to the creation of the online shop. We had a website, but not an online shopping portal.
Okay.
So I did that so we could do invoicing through there, get a lot of stuff up there. But primarily and early on, it was to get the stuff that you could contribute to the kids up there. And so that's a big change. And it's been working pretty well. It's obviously been a bit of a learning curve. That was never part of it. I didn't open the shop to make as much money as possible, and I definitely didn't open the shop to be a mail order service. So that's been tough to be like, this is a necessity to kind of keep going. But just for people that don't know, like, this is also another reason that it was so important Diamond shut down, right? If Diamond didn't shut down and they put me in the position of, I get these thousands of dollars of books when I'm closed and can't sell them, I can't legally do curbside. I can only mail them or deliver them to some people who don't want to see anyone right now.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
That'd break you.
So forget the health side of it. If like some states like Jersey were shut down and other states weren't, they looked at it and they were like, the 28 states that are shut down, if we keep making them get the books or else, they're just going to fold if they get these books. And if they don't get these books, they're going to fold because all their customers are going to buy them online or pirate them.
Yeah, especially as much, at a normal time, the amount of comics per week or per month is staggering. So if they didn't stop, I can't even imagine what. Yeah. Like a state like Jersey and New York, and when everything's shut down, it would have to go through.
It's one of the only reasons we survived, because all I had to do was, pay for myself and David, who's been helping out of the shop. I have obviously expenses, just live. I have a family. I have to pay the rent. I got to pay the utilities, right? There's things I have to pay. But if I had to be doing, thousands of dollars every week on new comics and not knowing if I could sell them, or risk losing some of my best customers, then the shop just wouldn't be here. Like Diamond did their part to save the industry. A lot of people disagreed with it, and it might be years until most people come around. But, I hope it all works out. I hope the shop is still here in 5, 10, 15 years. I hope that the industry is in a healthy place. And that could mean multiple distributors. I don't think it means multiple exclusive distributors. And I think that's what a lot of shop owners are saying too, right? Shop owners are not fundamentally pro Diamond monopoly. Shop owners are, if you want competition, then let's get competition. Let's get rid of these exclusive deals. That's bad, because that makes us do multiple invoices every week, multiple shipments, all that stuff I talked about earlier.
Do you think once we're over COVID, whenever that may be, right, and everything's back to normal in the ideal world, hopefully tomorrow, but that it's not going to happen. Do you still find yourself in the position? Do you think you're still going to keep shipping comics? Do you think that's a service that you might offer? Like, do you think any of the changes that you had to adopt during COVID, keep going on afterwards? Is primarily what I'm asking for.
Yeah, so I think a few things will continue. I think it's clear that our customer base wants to do good. And so I think keeping the pipeline of getting comics and probably continuing to distribute them through the free lunch program, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if the schools will want to do that when it's not just like they have their table set up and people are coming to pick it up, when it's like actually at lunchtime, and it's another way for people to. I don't want to assume everyone's going to bully a kid with a free lunch, right? But if that kid's getting a free lunch in a comic, then, maybe that doesn't work. So we might have to figure that out. But I do want to keep some type of program like that going. We've just been able to do so much good. And there's people who now, like, whether they're doing a mail order or now they're doing curbside, they're just like tack on 10 back issues or tack on a young reader bundle to donate. And you're just like, that's awesome. Yeah. So keeping that option, especially online, we ship some through eBay, but a lot of times that's like variants and comic sets and things like that. It's not new comics. And I still don't think that's ever going to be part of the business model. But the website's there. It's there to stay. I do think that it might not be once a week when this is done, but we will continue to offer some form of delivery. I think that's important for, especially as long as this goes on for, but probably, unless everyone's getting vaccinated, we could just have waves periodically. If someone doesn't feel well enough or is afraid for their health to come out,
Yeah.
I think there should be an option of like, I can get this book to you. It might not be every week. It might be once a month, but I can get your pull to you. Right. And people don't want it. Like, the reason shops exist too is not just people want to browse. It's because you don't want to deal with the worst part of the hobby that I deal with, which is unpacking damaged books.
Yes.
Right. So I don't want to ship to someone in Bayonne or Jersey City. Yeah. I want them to come to my shop so I can get them books, and they can be like, hey, this one's got a ding on it. And I can be like, all right, I'll get you a replacement. Right. Or let me just replace that right now. Right. I want to hand books to someone that I can deliver to. I don't want to ship. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's what the hobby is ever. It's not what it's for.
No.
Yeah. Right. Just it's never made sense. That's part of the reason it's such a pain, is because comics aren't made to be shipped that way. You're just supposed to pick them up and be like, this is awesome, and flip through it.
Yep. Exactly. That magical like sight of the book. And that's another question I had for you is I think me and you were discussing this probably the last time I picked up about like, do you think, COVID will change some things forever almost? Do you think there'll ever be a time where, people will be able to go into the shop and be able to flip through, which is half the hobby, right? Flipping through back issues, looking through new issues or seeing if you want to add something to your list, wall books, like rare books, stuff like that. Like how much do you think that's going to change overall in your just business model at this point?
That's a good question, man.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest issues. I think one of the first times you picked up was, when you're just like, oh, but your business should be okay for curbside, right? And I'm just like, I have 20,000 back issues on the floor at any one time, and we've just sorted thousands more, right? And it's like a little before this all started, I sold probably 20 long boxes of just overstock.
Oh, wow.
And you're just like, there's just a lot of books, and I buy a lot of collections, and I haven't bought any during this time because I don't want to go to someone's house. I don't want to have them hovering over me, right? I don't want to be doing that. And I don't want to be like...
breathing on your neck, literally.
Yeah, and then I don't want to be like negotiating prices with someone or haggling with someone, like when you just don't be around people who could get you sick.
Exactly.
But in terms of like when people can come back to the shop and like look at wall books, buy wall books, flip through back issues, assuming we can open up, my plan is, look, I can't clean everything in the shop. Right, I can't spray it down because they're comic books,
and it's paper. Yeah,
right. So
paper, water don't mix.
But what I was doing even before New Jersey closed down non-essential retail was I was only open Wednesday and Saturday. I don't think I'm going to go that extreme, but the reason for that is it's pretty accepted that even if you have coughed on your hand and you're sick, and you have transferred something to a paper, that's not as easy as we thought at the outset of this. Mm-hmm. Right? It's still possible, but even if you transfer it onto that paper, you can just like explode those germs by washing your hands or using hand sanitizer. Yep. Right? So that's part of it. But I'm planning on building in these sort of like fire break days where, we'll be open, but after Wednesday, we're not going to be open on Thursday.
Okay.
Because that way, even if there was any germs here, any of the virus, it's dead. It just died off, right? We know it doesn't survive for more than a day. So you're just like, except it's under ideal conditions. You're just like on a comic, it's just not going to survive. Yep. So we're going to build in those fire break days. So we're only going to be open probably like 2 days and then off, and then 2 days and then off again.
That makes sense. I like that. Yeah. I think it's a lot of people are going to be calm when they hear that, especially the reason behind it. Like, oh, it doesn't last for a day. I think that's going to eliminate a lot of stress that people might have.
Yeah. This is to pat myself on the back because it's not like it stopped anything from happening, right? But it's like, I'm really proud of the fact that our, like the week to 10 days before this all really, really became bad and obvious to everyone, we have to shut down stores and shut down gathering places. The vast majority of the community was super cool about the fact that I had to cut hours, right, to make sure these germs weren't spreading. Yeah. That if you came in and you wanted to look at any comic that wasn't in your pull, you had to wash your hands. Yeah. And people did it. Even people who were just like, oh, why? Because of the virus, they still did it. And it's just like, you could do it or don't, right?
Yeah, you can do it or leave.
If you don't, like, I don't have to keep you in the store. So,
yeah, exactly.
Like, you can find some other store that doesn't care.
Yeah.
And, so I think because of that engendered a lot of like good faith and trust. And that when we enact similar policies, when we're hopefully able to reopen in about a week, that it'll work and people will follow that. We're not gonna be able to let big groups into the store, unfortunately, which kind of sucks because one of the coolest things too is just like when a group of like 6 teenagers is just like they got something at 7-Eleven and one of them is like, hey, you want to check out the comic book shop? Yeah. And just like a pack of kids comes in, and for half of them, it's the first time they've ever been to the shop. Yeah. For one or two of them, they've loved the cartoons or movies forever and are just like itching to get their hands on something. And you're just like, I can't just let 6 people come into the store now. It might be like 3 or 4 or something like that. But we're going to do what it takes. We shut down. We've been shut down. We haven't violated anything because I firmly believe this is the right decision and it saved lives. And so we're going to do everything we can to, let people experience their local comic shop again after months, but also, to be safe. And we the last couple of weeks, I've done the last month or so, 2 different Facebook Live sales. I never thought I was going to do a Facebook Live sale.
How'd those go?
The pretty well. The first one was, a bit of a learning experience, but then I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to get some like streaming software and a separate camera and we're going to do it a little differently. I learned a lot from that. And it was still very successful thanks to a lot of just excited comic fans and a couple who either very rarely or have never been to the shop. They just found it from like local Facebook pages and just got a lot of cool stuff. And now we're on first name basis because you kind of talk in the chats too.
Yeah.
And the next one's actually going to be this upcoming Saturday, the 13th.
You guys hear that? The 13th.
Yep.
Be ready.
The 13th. And you can just, it's going to be 2:00. And the reason we're doing it earlier is because some people requested being able to do curbside, which when we did the first one wasn't possible yet.
Yeah.
But now that it is, people are like, hey, I want it curbside at same day. And I'm like, well, I can't. I'm running the sale. I can't just stop it, And so this way, if it's in the regular store hours and then David will also be there, we'll be able to, anyone who wants to be able to curbside their stuff, even if the sale is still going on.
Dude, that's
so
awesome.
My plan in terms of, what's going to continue out of this too, I think I'm going to try to do at least one of those a month as long as there's demand for it. Because it's not, anyone who's lived in this area knows, Bayonne's this weird peninsula where if you live like below a certain point, you just like don't leave unless you have to, right? If like, you're below like 12th or 15th, wherever like your brain decides.
It's so true.
You just like don't. And it's like, it's weird because to me,
never leave.
Like I live like almost all the way up and I'm just like, if there's like a cafe, or there's like a park or there's like the, our local bookstore is all the way downtown, it's like, we'll just go. Like it's more of a trip, but I'll just go. But it's a very much like tip of the peninsula mindset. Where they're just like, nope, not leaving.
Not leaving Bergen Point.
Yeah, there are literally people who are like, when's the next time you're going to do this like festival? And I'm just like, well, the festival is like in October. Yeah. So that would be when I'll be down there again. But like with this, with this, if I do it, like, I think I can maintain, doing it like once a month and being like, because a couple of people, they're just like, oh yeah, I'll buy all this stuff if I don't have to leave my home and you bring it to me. Right. And especially with the changes that DC has implemented, we don't know how bad the economy will be overall.
Yeah.
I think I'd be an idiot to not keep trying to get books into people's hands that want them, even if it involves more work and different types of work than I'm used to. That's why I'm doing this. And also it's like, I can't keep the shop open just for love of the game, right? Like I have to try stuff. I have to keep growing the shop and offering different services to stay around.
Yeah. And I think that's worked well. I mean, from everything I've seen from, again, like I've been there since day one.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I'm pretty sure there's a really nice stack of comics in my room that have been Mike telling me this is really good.
Yeah.
Like you're not the worst salesman either.
Thanks. I think it helps that I don't just like lie to people, right? Like I never tell you a mistruth or an untruth just to make a sale.
Oh, 100%.
And if someone's like, if someone asks me if I've read something I haven't read it, I'll be like, honestly, I haven't gotten to that yet, or like it's in my stack, right? I'll tell you the truth. And if I've read it and I don't like it, I'll say like, oh, it's not for me. But if I think you will like it, even if I didn't like it, I'll tell you why I think you'll like it.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. But if I don't like it, I'll be like, there's times I'll just tell people, I'm like, hey, I'm not a JRJR guy, so you're asking the wrong person, right? Like I understand that part of my brain now is just like, it cannot be changed, where I look at the page and I'm like, don't even want to read this.
Yep, potato.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just like, that's another potato face.
I've gotten to that point now with
I don't want to do it.
Yeah. And so I would say, definitely not only just to wrap this awesome interview up, Mike,
Yes.
and get you back to your normal life, but what are ways people can continue to help, especially during the crisis, post-crisis with Manifest? Again, his website's manifestcomics.com. You can find him on Facebook, or go to the store for curbside.
Yes.
But yeah, what are ways people can help? I know everyone kind of is in a different situation financially, right?
Right.
Whether it's, hey, I had, like me personally, Comic Stop, I had back issues with you that were still there. So I was like, all right, we'll do like kind of a payment plan every week. Like what can people do to help right now when comics are kind of trickling back or when they come back?
Right. I think there's a few things, and I don't want to presume that everyone who's listening and watching is going to come to my shop or even go to manifestcomics.com. So I'll try to make this more generalized. Obviously, if you want to directly help the store, it is manifestcomics.com. And, if you're in the area, do stop by, you give a shout out if you came from the show. That's awesome. I'd love to meet new fans. But the few things you can do just generally, not just even post COVID, is communicate with your shop, right? Like if you have a shop, then communicate with them because they're trying to communicate with you if they're halfway decent at their job. Mm-hmm. They've been doing newsletters, tweeting, Facebook posts, whatever it is, some cases like direct calls. Yep. And what you can do to help if you're facing a hardship, if you're a family member sick or you're sick, you're not feeling well, or you're out of work, let your shop know and figure something out. If you need to cancel your books or cut back your list, let your shop know that. Don't be afraid of telling someone bad news in a difficult time, because the worst thing for a shop is we have to order books on a non-returnable basis, now on a more expensive basis from multiple distributors. So if I'm putting all these orders in and then you tell me a month from now you're not coming in, or I never hear from you again, right? I'm stuck with those books. And if we have a second wave and I'm stuck with all these books, I can't put them on the racks. No one's going to discover those books, right? So it's like, that's one really easy thing. It's just don't make the job of any comic book retailer more difficult, right? It's like if they're trying to communicate with you, meet them halfway. If you have a need, if you have a concern, if you have a fear, just meet them there. Just talk to them about that. And in terms of just like, hey, how can we help, right? I said this in the newsletters too and the Facebook Lives. If you can afford to, it's awesome if you can figure out a way to help the community if you don't need more books or want more books through your shop. I think like bookstores are doing this, restaurants are doing this. It's a really easy way to help local businesses to be like, hey, I'm still, fully employed, or I'm getting that extra $600 from the government every week. I would like to pay it forward, or I would like to get some of this into the community to do good, but I don't want to be exposed to anything, right? That makes sense. So help your local businesses, help the community. But part of that is talking to them about it if they're not doing this already themselves, if they don't have that sort of middleman operation set up. And then, if there is stuff that you want for yourself, or you're getting stuff for Father's Day or whatever, shop local, buy from your local comic shop, buy from your local game store. Don't buy from big boxes. Try to avoid going to Walmart. You're also likely avoiding the crowds, and it's just going to be better for your health.
Avoiding
all sorts of
reasons.
Yeah. There's so many little reasons why, and I hope they add up enough that like there really is a resurgence in just main streets in general. Like all the shops that survive are going to keep surviving because of a lot of decisions by people to care in their shopping choices and to care about their local communities. And the most frustrating thing is like, I don't donate books and I don't try to be a part of the community because I know that will get me sales, right?
Yeah.
But also don't expect the store to do that if you're not going to support the store in good times and bad.
Exactly.
Any store. Right? Like they can't because they won't be there anymore. So don't assume that your store is going to be fine just because curbside started. Don't assume that your comic book shop's going to be fine because the doors are open, because you never know. And that's part of the reason why retailers are so upset about the DC timing as well, because you've made it more difficult for stores to survive in the few months coming out, at least initially, of this like reopening sort of phase. And I don't know, where everyone is, but at least in Jersey, we're theoretically going to be open the 15th.
Awesome.
So those are right now, right?
Those are easy ways. And you know what? it's free. It's completely free to like or comment on a Facebook post, or to retweet, or to share a Facebook post. You never know when someone wants to donate something. You never know when someone who's loved all the movies is just like, oh crap, yeah, I got a bunch of time. I could like get a book and read it, and I would love to support local right now.
Yeah, why not?
So it's free. It is completely free to share, to comment. Even just like liking and commenting a Facebook post is gonna put that on someone's feed.
Yeah, 100%.
You don't even have to share if you don't want to. Just like and comment, and that does a lot.
Yeah. Awesome. Well said, Mike.
And thank you so much for being on the channel, man.
So much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. This is really fun. It's cool to kind of just like
great.
talk stuff and not feel like you're shouting into a hurricane on Twitter.
Yeah, and to see Rob's ridiculously long beard.
Oh,
that's getting there.
His quarantine beard.
I'm trying to get it to the Gandalf level. I want to go all the way down.
Yeah. Next time I see you, you better have like a knit sweater out of like your COVID hair.
Oh, a knit sweater. That's not a bad idea.
With a long colored cob pipe. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this, Mike.
Yeah, of course.
We really appreciate it. Obviously, Mike said it all, where you can find him, the website, how you can help out. Definitely help your local stores.
Support your locals.
Support your locals, your restaurants, everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll probably see you in a couple days to pick up.
Yeah. Oh, one really quick thing too is like, if you like a place at all and you haven't given it a 5-star review on Facebook, on Google, on Yelp, whatever it is, please do that. Don't think like it's not that big a deal, because all of our worst reviews are just very angry people. Oh, wow. Who is like, man, if you even like said something to me, I would love to just like talk to you about it. And like, you can't do anything about that. The only thing you can do about it is to make sure that the people who do like what you're doing and like your shop just take 10 seconds to give you 5 stars. So please do that with a restaurant that you like, right? Like everything you like that will help them, because as things are opening, a lot of people aren't just going to their favorite places. They're going to be trying places they've heard of, talked about, or have seen things shared by. So please, just 5-star review everything you like at all, and you are doing your part. Thank you all so much for just like giving me this opportunity. And also, you know, it's like, we're just, just like, let's like actually talk as people instead of, you know, texting and tweeting and all that stuff.
100%. I was laughing a little bit because you were talking about communicating through comic stores, and I'm like, I'm probably the most over communicator, where I'm in the store like, hey Mike, did I put this on my list yet? Like 18 times, and you're like, we did this last week, and I'm like, really, we did? You mind checking just again?
Over communication is way better than under communication, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely a subgroup that's like triple checking, and that's okay. Like when I lock the shop up, like I triple, quadruple check. I have to say out loud, like, I locked it, I can go to bed. It's like, you know, it's my first baby. It's like, I love my kids more than I'll ever love a thing like the shop, but I tell everyone like the shop's my first baby.
Yeah, definitely, man. And thank you so much again. We'll see you soon, and stay safe, man.
You too. Stay safe.